Islam, World Religions, Islam, Station 3. How did Islam grow so rapidly in its scope and power? The birthplace of Islam. Where did Islam begin? Islam began in 610 on the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabian Peninsula is located in southwest Asia, south of the Fertile Crescent. It is bordered by the Red Sea to the west. The Indian Ocean is to the south. The Persian Gulf is to the east. It is part of the Middle East, the rest of which lies to the north. The Arabian Peninsula was surrounded by important ancient civilizations. These included the Mesopotamians to the north and the Egyptians across the Red Sea to the west. Because of its location, the Middle East developed as a center of trade between ancient civilizations. The history of the Arabian Peninsula has been shaped by its geographic features. These include desert, oases, mountains, and fertile coastland. The Arabian Desert in the Arabian Peninsula contains vast expanses of sand as well as plains and plateaus. Desert. When most people think of the Arabian Peninsula, they think of vast stretches of sandy desert. Indeed, about 3/4 of the Arabian Peninsula is covered in desert. Parts of the desert are rolling dunes of sand. Other areas include dry plains and high, flat-topped hills. Weather in the desert is harsh. Temperatures reach 120 degrees Fahrenheit or more during the day. Sometimes temperatures plunge close to freezing during the night. Rain is scarce. Long periods without rain, called droughts, sometimes last for years. The occasional hard rain can cause flash floods. Windstorms sweep the desert. During these storms, it is almost impossible to see. The windstorms change the shape of the sand into tall dunes. Oases. Oases appear throughout the desert. They appear where there is fresh water available at a spring or water hole. Oases are marked by the trees and plant life that surround them. Oases can be small, only a few acres. Others are much larger. The Al Hassa Oasis in eastern Saudi Arabia is 47 square miles and contains large areas of trees and irrigated cropland. Mountains. Mountains cover the western part and the southeastern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. The mountains provide a barrier or natural wall between the coastland and the desert. These mountains receive much more rain than the desert. Mountain areas receive up to 20 inches of rain a year. It is also cooler in the mountains than the rest of the peninsula. Dry riverbeds cross the mountains. Some hard rainstorms can cause sudden floods and fill the riverbeds with water. The mountains also keep rain from falling on the desert. Most rain falls on the mountains before reaching the desert areas. Fertile coastland. The Arabian Peninsula is surrounded by an area of fertile coastland. This coastland is between 5 and 50 miles wide. Rain falls regularly in this area. This is the area of the Arabian Peninsula most suited for farming. Ancient farmers dug irrigation canals. They also stored rainwater to irrigate their fields. The coast also had a few natural harbors for ships. Riverbeds cut across the plains. Occasionally these riverbeds filled with water after a heavy rainfall. Deserts and nomads. How did the geography of the Arabian Peninsula shape life there? The geography of the Arabian Peninsula shaped the lives of the people who lived there. The people in the various kinds of places. They lived in the desert, at oases, in the mountains around the coast. Some people who lived in the Arabian Peninsula chose to adopt a nomadic lifestyle. They traveled from oasis to oasis with their herds of animals. These nomads were called Bedouins. The Bedouins used camels as their main method of transportation. Camels were well suited for the dry, hot climate. Bedouins also raised sheep and goats. They used their animals for food, clothing, and shelter. They traded for the things they could not produce. Some Bedouins became traders. They crossed the desert in caravans of camels for trade, center to trade, center and oasis to oasis. With their camels, they could travel long distances. Other Bedouins decided to settle down in the oasis and begin to farm. They grew date palm trees, which thrived in the hot, dry climate. The date palm trees offered shade, food, and materials for shelter. Date palm trees are found throughout the Arabian Peninsula. Some of these oases developed into small trading centers. The caravans would stop there and rest while they're trading their goods. Nomads also would come into oasis towns to trade their animal products for the farmers' crops. In the mountains, farmers created terraces to farm the steep land. These people were apart from the rest of the peninsula and developed separate ways of life. Farmers used irrigation systems to bring water to their fields. They grew crops such as melons and trees that produce frankincense. Frankincense is a special gum. When burned, it gives off a perfumed scent. It is used in religious ceremonies. Along the coast, both farming and trading thrived. Trade centers grew up around the few natural harbors. People arrived there from along the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf to trade their goods. Some people came from as far away as Africa and India. Both farming and trade made the coastal areas rich. Powerful kingdoms formed along the coast. Muhammad the Trader. How did Muhammad begin to teach the religion of Islam? Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was born in Mecca around 570. Mecca was one of the main trading centers of the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad was orphaned at an early age. He was cared for by his grandfather and then his uncle, who was a trader. At least once, Muhammad traveled with his uncle on trading voyages going as far as Syria. Muhammad's early life. During the time of Muhammad, Mecca was a quickly growing trading center. It was the heart of the trade between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. However, Mecca was also a religious center. It contained a special holy place called the Kaaba. The Arabs were polytheists. This meant they believed in many gods. The Kaaba, a cube-shaped building, contained statues of hundreds of local gods. Each year, people throughout the region took a pilgrimage to Mecca and the Kaaba to worship gods. Christian, Zoroastrian, and Jewish traders traveled to Mecca to participate in trade. Growing up, Muhammad was influenced by the traders who believed in one God instead of many. The Mecca of Muhammad's early life was marked by conflicts between the old ways and the new. Mecca was the center of Arab and Bedouin religious life, but it was rapidly changing. Its role as a trade center brought wealth to the region. It also led to the rise of a merchant class. Changing beliefs. Muhammad grew to become a respected member of Meccan society. He was a successful trader. However, he also had a rich religious life. He would travel into the mountains to pray and reflect on his rapidly changing world. According to Islamic teachings, in 610, Muhammad traveled to the mountains at the age of 40 to pray. The angel Gabriel spoke to Muhammad and told him to pray. When Muhammad asked what he should pray, the angel replied, "In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, recite thou, in the name of thy Lord who created man from clots of blood. Recite thou, for Lord is the most beneficent, who has taught the use of the pen, hath taught man that which he knoweth not." Surah 96, verses 1 through 3. Muslims believe this is the beginning of the 22 years of revelations that the angel Gabriel transmitted from God to Muhammad. The revelations and teachings of Muhammad. What message did Muhammad spread to the people of Mecca? Muhammad returned from the mountains in 610. He thought he might be going crazy. He talked to his wife, Kaja. She convinced him that he was receiving messages from Allah, the Arabic word for God. Kaja became the first convert to Islam. Muhammad told people about his messages. First he told his family and friends, and then he told others. His followers recorded his teachers in the Quran, which later became Islam's holy book. Muhammad taught the Meccans should abandon their many gods. He said they should worship the one true God. He attacked the worship of idols. These teachings were also followed by Judaism and Christianity. They were the other faiths of Southwest Asia that worship one God. Muhammad called for followers to obey Allah. People who followed Muhammad's teachings became Muslims, or those who surrendered to God. Muhammad also taught about social issues. He taught that all Muslims were equal in the eyes of God. He preached that the wealthy should share their wealth with the poor. He spoke out against the bad treatment of women. He told Meccans to take care of orphans. Muhammad gained followers among his own extended family. He also gained some followers from the poor and homeless of Mecca. However, many of Mecca's leading families were not pleased with Muhammad's message. Make sure you're pausing and filling out your notes as you go along, and pause, come back, and keep moving. Reaction and resistance. How did the people of Mecca react to Muhammad's message? The leaders of Mecca did not like Muhammad's message for several reasons. First, he was encouraging people to stop worshiping the many statues of gods in the Kaaba. This was disturbing to people who believed in many gods. Also, Meccan merchants relied on trade gained by the many pilgrims who came to Mecca to visit the Kaaba each year. They worried that new converts to Islam would stop coming to Mecca on pilgrimage. Second, the wealthy Meccan people did not like Muhammad's message about people being equal in the eyes of God. They did not like Muhammad's teaching that the rich should give away their money to share their wealth with the poor and needy. The people who opposed Muhammad's teachings fought against the spread of Islam. They called Muhammad a liar. They tortured some of his followers. They refused to do business with Muslims. Muhammad was invited by some recent converts in Islam to come to Medina, a nearby town, to solve the conflict. In 622, he and about 200 of his followers left Mecca and moved to Medina. The people of Medina were much more likely to listen to Muhammad's message. Gradually, Islam spread throughout Medina and to surrounding Arab communities. However, Meccans still attacked Muhammad and his followers. War raged for about 8 years between the Meccans and the Muslims. Finally, in 630, Muhammad and his followers marched peacefully from the Kaaba. From Medina to Mecca. When they arrived in Mecca, they threw the statues of the gods out of the Kaaba. Then they made the Kaaba a holy place to worship Allah. Muhammad forgave his enemies. He returned to Medina. He continued to unite the Arabian Peninsula under Islam. In 632, Muhammad made a pilgrim from Medina to Mecca. This journey became the model for Islamic pilgrimages. Faith, prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage. What are Muslims required to do? Muslims must follow the five central practices. They are called the 5 pillars of Islam. These are faith, prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage. Faith, or Shahada. Muslims are required to state their faith. They must say there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. In this brief sentence, they announce their belief in one God and in Muhammad's teachings, because Muhammad is the messenger of God. The Shahada is an important part of Islamic life. Parents whisper it into their children's ears at birth. The Shahada also is the central importance of God to each Muslim's life. A common phrase spoken by Muslims is Insha'Allah, or if God wills. Will you be home for dinner? Yes, Insha'Allah. When we get to Grandma's house? In 3 hours, Insha'Allah. Prayer, or Salat. The second pillar is called Salat. Muslims must pray 5 times a day. Muslims must pray by themselves. In Muslim communities, they try to gather at the mosque. There they wash their faces, hands, and feet to be clean before God. Muslims form line behind the prayer leader. They follow his lead as they face Mecca, and stand to kneel and bow to the floor. During the prayers, the prayer leader often repeats the phrase, Allahu Akbar, or God is great. On Fridays, many Muslims gather together for Friday afternoon prayer. The prayer is usually followed by a sermon from the imam, or the leader of the mosque. Charity, or zakat. The third pillar is charity. Muhammad told his followers to take care of the orphans and the poor. According to the teachings of Islam, Muslims must share a part of their wealth with the poorer neighbors. Some Muslims give this amount directly to the poor. Others give it to a religious group that hands out the money. Zakat provides the poor with many things. This includes shelter, care for orphans, clean water, and schooling. Fasting, or Siyam. Muslims are required to fast. The fast takes place during the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. This month is called Ramadan. According to Islamic teachings, it is when Muhammad first received a message from God. From sunrise to sundown, most Muslims do not eat or drink. Children, the elderly, sick or injured people, travelers, and pregnant women are not expected to fast. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims rise before the sun to eat breakfast. After fasting all day, they then break their fast with a small snack. Sometimes they eat dates. After the snack, they perform the sunset prayer. After the prayer, they gather with friends and family for a large meal. Ramadan is also a time for giving to charity. Fasting helps Muslims realize what it's like to be hungry. Wealthier Muslims often will provide Ramadan feasts for others. At the end of Ramadan, Muslims celebrate Eid al-Fitr with gifts and feasts. Pilgrim, or Hajj. All Muslims who are able to try to travel to Mecca at least once in their lifetime. This trip is a holy pilgrimage. Muslims usually travel to Mecca during the celebration of Eid al-Adha. This holiday celebrates the holy story of Abraham. Abraham was willing to be obedient even when God asked him to sacrifice his son Isaac. Just before Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, God stopped him, letting him to kill a ram instead. A holy book and guides to follow. Where do Muslims receive guidance for how to live their lives? Muslims base their religion on the Quran and the Sunnah. Together, these writings offer Muslims religious instruction. The Quran is a collection of inspiring ideas that Muhammad is believed to have received from the angel Gabriel. Muhammad developed his teachings based on these ideas. Because others wrote down the teachings of Muhammad, there are many different early accounts. In 651, Caliph Uthman, the third ruler after Muhammad's death, put together an official version of the Quran. He has discussed his words with Muhammad's followers. He paid special attention to those who had been present when Muhammad shared what the angel had told him. Caliph Uthman arranged a version of what most followers agree was the truest to what Muhammad had said. Then Uthman ordered all other versions destroyed. Many Muslims memorize the Quran in Arabic. They believe that translating the Quran into other languages changes and weakens the message. Muslim children often go to school and begin to memorize verses from the Quran. Later they learn their meaning. Muslims who memorize the entire Quran are celebrated for their achievement. The Quran contains stories similar to the Jewish and Christian holy books. It also gives instructions on how to live as faithful Muslim. The main source of religious teachings for all Muslims is believe the word of God, for the angel Gabriel to be Muhammad. Jihad. Jihad is not a pillar of Islam, but an Islamic idea. Jihad means to struggle. The Quran tells Muslims they should fight to protect themselves or to right a horrible wrong. However, Muhammad declared the lesser jihad. The greater jihad was the struggle with oneself to accept God's will and battle evil. Examples of the greater jihad would be the following. I'm going to pause there because we are out of time.